Okay, it's running.
Okay, so welcome everyone to our November meeting of the Union Township Planning Commission, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I have the screen.
As soon as we get the flag here.
There we
There we
go.
go.
Should be able to see it now.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, very good, thank you. We'll move to roll call
Squatrito,
here.
Fuller,
Here.
Darren,
Here.
Shingles,
Here.
Faring,
Here.
LaBelle,
Here.
excused Cody and Buckley. Also here, Nanny, Galenay, and Loveberry.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so we last met on October 20th, and so you do have the October 20th minutes in your packet. And so are there any corrections to the October 20th minutes? I didn't see any myself. I thought they looked good.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
So the motion was by the dark box in the upper left corner, actually by LaBelle. And the second was by Thering to approve the minutes as submitted. Further discussion? I'll just ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we'll consider our minutes approved. Thank you. So next item is correspondence, board reports, and presentations. So Cody, updates from Board of Trustees. I guess we won't have that unless either Rodney or Peter, if you have any knowledge of anything we should be updated on.
Only that the new board starts their work next week. We are the final meeting of the outgoing Board of Trustees was on the 10th, and we'll have 3 new members and of course a new supervisor come the 24th.
Okay. All right, and then Buckley updates from ZBA. I guess we also won't have, although you have in your packet the report, and the report I guess makes clear that they had a quiet year, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? If they're not handling a lot of issues. Do we need to take any formal action on this report? Do we need to accept it, or are we just kind of a pass through?
I would suggest a motion to accept would be in order.
Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to accept the annual report from the Zoning Board of Appeals to the Planning Commission.
I move to accept the annual ZBA report to the Planning Commission.
Second.
Okay, so the motion was by Thering with a second by Shingles to accept the annual ZBA report. Further discussion? Again, I'm just going to ask for a voice vote on this. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, so we'll accept that report. Any other reports or presentations that anyone is aware of? Has Sidewalks and Pathways met? Okay,
No, they have not.
all right. All right, so we'll move on. So the next item is approval of the agenda. So the agenda for tonight has, well, I guess really 3 new business items, a rezone request, approval of the meeting schedule, and then approval of our annual report. And then the other business is the carryover of the discussion of the master plan. So are there any other things that need to be on the agenda? Any changes that anyone has? If not, then I would entertain a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
So the motion is by Fuller to approve the agenda. Is there a second? Second by Darren to approve the agenda. Further discussion? Once again, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so our agenda is approved. Public comment. So towards the beginning of each meeting, we have a point where we give the public an opportunity to comment on any item that's not on tonight's agenda. The rezone request is a public hearing, so if anyone is here to speak on that, that will be a separate event that will be coming up here shortly. So if there's anyone who'd like to address the Planning Commission on any item not on tonight's agenda, we just ask you to hit your raise hand button, signal your intention or desire to be recognized, and we'll give you an opportunity to offer a public comment. So public comment is open at 7:10. Do we have any audience? I haven't looked.
We have three folks in the audience, two of which are I'm aware of are associated with the application for the rezoning. The third I don't know for sure.
Okay.
The raise hand button can be found down at the bottom of your screen.
Okay. Well, seeing none, I'll assume that the folks are here for the other topics. So we'll go ahead and close the public comment at 7:11. And therefore, we're ready to move on to new business. So the first item is the rezone request 20-03 from Grayling Investors involving a piece of property at the corner of Broomfield and Isabella. So I will turn it over to Rodney and/or Peter for an introduction, then we'll proceed to the public hearing.
Thank you very much. I'll just say a few words in introduction. As said, this is a rezoning request for almost 7 acres of land on the southwest corner of Broomfield and Isabella. It's property that is divided in its zoning with the northern portion in the B4 general business and the southern portion in the B5 highway business district. It is in the bluegrass center areas on the edge of that area as defined in the master plan. This project came to us in an unusual way. It begins under our old zoning ordinance as a special use permit for a filling station and a preliminary review of a site plan for a filling station, restaurant, and with a drive-through, all of which took place under our former ordinance. The formal site plan application for approval of those facilities, unfortunately, did not come in under our old ordinance. It came in about 3 days after our current ordinance went into effect. And that ordinance had included a change in the B4 district, in that general business district no longer allows for drive-through restaurants as an allowable use. And so it altered the allowable uses on the B4 portion of the property. That's what then triggered the applicant to decide to seek this rezoning application. The rezoning, although I wanted to mention that history because I do believe it's relevant to our case, but with any rezoning application, we are looking at all the potential uses in the existing zoning and in the proposed zoning district. So while the applicant may comment, even our report comments somewhat on their specific development proposal, we also do discuss in our report, and the Planning Commission should consider all the potential uses in the districts involved as you're considering whether this rezoning is appropriate or not. With that in mind, I'm happy to answer questions as we go along.
Okay. Any questions for Rodney from the commissioners? I mean, we'll have a deliberation period after the hearing as well. All right. Well, if not, then we'll move on to the public hearing. So the rezone request was, the announcement was I'm assuming was published in the newspaper, and as would normally be done, and that the local property owners were notified. So I just want to point out that public hearing is really the opportunity for members of the general public to offer their comments on the proposed rezoning request. The applicant and the applicant's representatives will have their own opportunity to speak during the process, and so we don't really necessarily need to hear from them during the public hearing. If there is anyone from the general public who would like to address the Planning Commission on this rezone request, we ask you again to hit your raise hand button, make your intentions known, and then we'll make it so that you can offer your public comment. We ask you to give us your name and address for the minutes, and to limit your initial comments to 3 minutes. Once everyone who wants to speak has had an opportunity to speak, we'll consider recognizing people for additional comments. So the public hearing on rezone request 20-03 is open at 7:16. So I'm seeing that you've brought someone over to our side. Is that to offer a comment, I'm assuming?
Well, this is the only person that was not that's not actually an applicant. So I just made the note that they could speak if they wished, but they have not chosen to do so.
Okay. Right. Yeah, if anyone does want to address the Planning Commission, they should unmute themselves and offer their comments. Did we receive any written correspondence on this? Any written comments or any inquiries at all from the public?
No, we did not receive any written correspondence. Peter, did you receive any calls on this? No, I haven't either. So no correspondence.
All right. Well, once again, public hearing is open, so anyone is invited to address the Planning Commission on this proposal. And hearing none, I'm going to suggest that we let the record state that no public comments were offered, and close the public hearing at 7:18. So the next item is updates from the applicant and staff. So if we want to give the applicants an opportunity to address us, they can do that at this time.
So Richard Jaskowski has raised his hand. He is the applicant. So
Okay.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My picture is not coming up. I'm not sure how these work with the Zoom meetings, but thank you for taking our application tonight. We really don't have much to add to the letter and petition that we sent in, but obviously we're very interested in moving forward. with our project. It is still the same as presented before. We are, our engineer is also on the line to answer any specific questions you may have with things, but this, we understand that because of the date that our final site plan was submitted, we need to move for this zoning change to allow us to proceed with our project. And so we're certainly happy to do whatever we need to do to keep things moving. And we respectfully appreciate, you know, the consideration from all of you. And really, I'm here just to answer any questions any of you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask, are there, well, let me ask this first. Do Rodney and or Peter have any updates to add? Anything to add from what you said earlier?
I think you have our report before you. It's dated November 9th. Just a couple of highlights from that. The first one is we're working with the new zoning ordinance, including the new section on amendments. And the key part of that new amendment section, which is 14.5 of the zoning ordinance, is 14.5G. It's entitled Findings of Fact Required. And this is new to the ordinance. And it's intended to provide you and also the Board of Trustees with guidance related to deliberating on any rezoning request, kind of trying to break down the decision into its component elements. And this section G has a series of 5 different factors, general factors, that ask you to take a look at. First one is evaluation of existing and proposed zoning districts. Second is apparent demand. This would be apparent demand for the uses that are in the proposed district primarily, but also the existing district, and if it's concerned whether it's viable. Then third item is availability of public services and infrastructure to support the uses in either district. The fourth is the evaluation of the consistency with the master plan. And one note on this is it does not, a rezoning does not necessarily, it's not simply a yes or no answer. Is it consistent? Then we approve it. If it's not consistent, we deny it. As you'll see in the bullet points underneath that consistency with the master plan item, there are times when a rezoning that's inconsistent with the plan should be considered, and some of that that guidance is in there. And then there's some additional factors looking at whether the exclusionary zoning, whether there's compatibility with various elements of the environment, physical and natural, man-made and natural, and then is there a inappropriate precedent, or is there some error that associated that requires a rezoning? So these are all factors that you're asked to look at. These are reflected in our report under the review comments, which has been structured basically to follow that. And in our report, we included some basically our staff observations on the rezoning request. The applicant has also provided their evaluation and their observations related to these same factors. So what I certainly would recommend as you're looking at this request, that whatever decision that you make, that you support it with some findings of fact, identifying facts or conclusions that you feel are relevant to the decision that you're making. And with that in mind, and hopefully people saw it today. I did send out an email earlier today. Unfortunately, I do have to apologize. We've been doing the draft motion templates for you to give you something to start with. And it was entirely my oversight that it did not get into your meeting packet. So it went out via email today. So you should have available to you draft motions that basically cover the range of possible options. And under each option, whether it's motion to recommend approval, motion to recommend denial, or otherwise, there are relevant findings of fact that were taken from our report or adapted from our report into those motions. So you have sort of starting point for having support for whichever decision you make tonight. As I said, as we go along, I'm happy to answer any questions about about the motions or about our report?
Okay, thank you, Rodney. I'm going to open the floor to commissioners, to the planning commissioners, to ask any questions that you might have of the applicant and of township staff, and to offer discussion.
Doug Lobel has raised his hand.
Okay, I'll recognize Doug. I'm not sure where I would see that on Zoom, but anyway, Doug, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Rodney, just a quick question. So it appears that the only change from the notes is that there was originally a double drive-through and it's going to be a single. Is that really the only change?
Well, yes, in the original preliminary plan that you saw, there was a double drive-through, and yes, the new proposal is a single. But I would encourage you to keep in mind that we're not reviewing the development plan tonight. We're looking broadly at whether the rezoning change to go from B4 to B5 for the remainder of the lot is an appropriate decision to make. So certainly, if you were to grant or recommend that the B5 rezoning be granted, that would allow them to proceed with their development as they would like to do. The action tonight is more general, looking at all the possible uses in either district, rather than just their proposal.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just wanted to clarify. That's all.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Other questions, comment, or discussion? I will say I mean, I understand the added issues related to the new zoning ordinance, but it is true. I remember when we looked at the preliminary on this, I think the applicant has fairly characterized the planning commission's reaction, in the sense that I don't recall it being a negative reaction. What I recall is the general feeling that what they were proposing on that particular spot did not seem unreasonable.
One comment, if I may, on that, related to the site plan. This is an interesting element. It's unfortunate for the applicant that they're in this position. The new ordinance actually solves, although it created a problem for them, it also solves one in the sense that there was never an action taken on the site plan. What we've done is, if somebody applied for site plan approval while the old ordinance was in effect, that was carried forward. That's why at your October meeting, we had a total of actually 4 site plan applications that were all reviewed under the old ordinance, even though the new ordinance had been in effect for almost a month, because they all were applied before that deadline. And now we have a 2-part process. We have a preliminary site plan approval and a final site plan approval. If this format had been in place in last year when they submitted their plan for a preliminary review, and there had been a formal planning commission action on it, that would have allowed them to continue forward. Essentially, we would have treated them as being under the old ordinance as they applied for final. But because there was the only action related to site plan, there was this application. Only formal action is this application we currently have. There was nothing to hang our hat on to allow them to be under the old ordinance. So we have Doug has his hand raised again.
Okay, Doug?
Yeah, so just to clarify, I understand we're just discussing and taking action on the rezoning tonight, but there will be a final site plan approval process later on, or was that something that we've already approved is what I was trying to get at?
Got it. Well, if you look in our report, you'll see the top of page 2, we have the timeline, the table that wraps over from page 1 to page 2. And you'll see on the top of page 2 that in September, unfortunately, several days after it's the end of September, but several days after the new ordinance went into effect, they did apply for final site plan approval. So that process was started. Unfortunately, as I said, we recognized that there was a problem with the ordinance, and so that process was paused at the staff review stage. And we met with the applicants and discussed with them options, and ultimately led to this application.
Yeah, so once we rezone this pretty much gives them to, they can go ahead and proceed with their project. That just takes me back to my previous question. I just wanted to verify the site plan that we recently approved in September. I can't remember, did we approve that with 2 drive-throughs or 1?
Well, it was not. There was no approval action done with. There was the preliminary review at the time last year, when it was before you, was simply an informal review, no action taken. So essentially, a review and comment type format under the old ordinance. So you did see a site plan and you did take a look at it, but no formal action was taken on it. That one did have a double drive-through. The applicant has submitted a site plan with just a single drive-through, which, if the rezoning is granted, would give them the ability to bring that before you at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions and comments? You made the comment, Rodney, in your report that and I think the applicant made it as well, that the property in question is at the northern edge of the what's called the Bluegrass Center area in the master plan. Here's the future land use map. It's right there up at the very top is the corner of Broomfield and Isabella. All right, so it's within the boundary of it, but it's right at the top. Because this master plan does talk about in that area, mixed use development and walkability and all this sort of thing. And so, in a sense, that's not kind of the traditional. That's not the type of development you'd associate with really pushing that vision. It's more of a traditional kind of drive-through type development. But on the other hand, it isn't in the center of that development of that area. It's at the northern fringe of it. So.
James Therian has his hand raised.
James.
Actually, I think this question is for Rodney. If we would so decide to approve the rezoning, and then for whatever reason, the developer decides that, this isn't the time for this project, does it stay the new rezoning that we've, does it stay at B5? Or would it revert back to B4 prior to? So kind of in a sense, it would start over.
Right. That's a great question. The answer is that the zoning change would run with the land going forward. And that's really why I emphasize that this is not about one particular development project, but has to be looked at more broadly at all the possible uses that are allowed in the B4 and in the B5, and also look at, quite frankly, this property and deciding whether it's even appropriate that it remains split zoned. It is the only property that is split zoned between the B4 and B5 district in the entire township. So, but it is important to look at it more broadly, because if this developer were to go away, and you have approved the zoning change, the zoning change would remain.
Is it possible though to, and I, again, only have been here since January. If it were to be accepted, could it be one of the conditions that it only changes if the developer moves forward?
That's also a great question. I first of all, I tell you, don't ever hesitate to ask any question, because if you are thinking about it, somebody else is also thinking about it. That's why I tell everybody I work with throughout my career. I said, if you think of it, there's at least 3 other people that are thinking of it, and they're too afraid to ask. So I always appreciate when people do ask. With a traditional rezoning of this kind, you don't have the ability to put conditions on it. So this really is sort of a yes or no. It's a bit of a nuanced yes or no, because as we noted in our report and in the draft motions, you have several choices. You can choose to follow the requested action by the applicant. You can choose to recommend denial of their request. So that's sort of the yes or no. But you also can choose to for example, recommend an alternative rezoning, which would be to rezone the whole parcel to B4 instead of B5. That obviously would not be consistent with this particular applicant's preferences, but that is a legitimate option that you have available to you. So, but beyond that, this is not a case where you have the ability to offer conditions. There is a provision in state law called conditional rezoning. But even there, you as a planning commission don't have the ability. It is a very awkward chunk of state law where a developer, an applicant, can propose limitations to self-impose limitations. Rezone me to B5, and I will agree to to not do X or Y, whatever land uses you don't want them to do. They would agree. Okay, even though they'd be allowed in B5, we're not going to do them. So that's a conditional rezoning process. That process, the state law says they can offer conditions, and all you can do is accept or reject them. Well, the practicality of it is some communities have used that as a bit of a negotiating thing. The law flat out says that all we can do as a township is either accept or reject their proposal. I offer that, and it's kind of an aside, because our new ordinance includes a provision that says we don't do conditional rezoning, because it really is it's not helpful for the township. It's not a good procedure. And there are better ones with like the plan unit development that are much easier to work with. So with that in mind, your choices really are recommend approval, recommend denial of their request, or recommend the alternative, which would be rezoning all entirely the B4 district. Phil, the applicant Richard has raised his hand.
Okay, I'll recognize Mr. Jaskowski.
Thank you, and please feel free to call me Rich. I just wanted to comment, our plans have not changed at all in any way on this. And I appreciate Mr. Nanny's comments, but if there is any way to condition anything, be it our site plan approval or the rezoning or anything, I was just going to indicate our willingness to abide by that, to say, hey, look, this is being granted only on the condition that you do what you've proposed, and don't have some underlying plan that you haven't told us about, because that's certainly not our plan. We want to move forward with what exactly has been proposed to you guys and have no ulterior motives here. And there are some slight differences, obviously, as you're well aware, between B4 and B5, but the districts aren't that different. But our plan is to simply move forward. And frankly, we understand if we get through this process, we still have to come back to you for final approval on our site plan. And again, if there's some way to make that conditional on us doing what we're telling you we're going to do, we're more than willing to do that. We want to work with you and only want to do what we've told you we want to do. So thank you.
All right, thank you. So other comments from commissioners?
Doug has raised his hand again.
Okay, I'll recognize Doug again.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a motion to recommend to the Township Board of Trustees that the PREZ 20-03 zoning map amendment to rezone the northern 465 feet of PID 026. 2000106 from B4 General Business to B5 Highway Business District be adopted based on the following findings and conclusions. Setbacks for both districts are equal. The subject parcel meets the required lot dimension standards for both a B4 and B5 parcel. Number two, a parcel that is split zoned in two different business districts can create obstacles for development as to where a use can go or if a use is allowed at all. Number three, the subject site is located on the northern edge of the Bluegrass Center area as defined on the future land use map. The Bluegrass Center area plan also encourages mixed-use developments with first floor retail, office, entertainment, restaurant venues, and residential units on upper floors as the intended predominant uses, especially in the core of this area along East Bluegrass Road. Number four, nearly all of the core of the Bluegrass Center area is currently zoned to B5 highway business. Number five, the full range of allowable uses in the proposed B5 district include auto-oriented activities that are not fully consistent with the Bluegrass Center area plan, but the proposed rezoning should be adopted based on the following information that supports a change without a need to amend the master plan. The timing of the adoption of the new zoning ordinance number 20-06, which disallowed drive-through restaurants in B4 General Business District, is a relevant fact to consider with regards to this requested zoning change. B, although the applicant failed to submit their final site plan application while zoning ordinance number 1991-5 was in effect, the SUP 2019-06 special use permit for a filling station was approved, and the previous SPR 2019-12 preliminary site plan for a filling station and restaurant with drive-through facilities did receive an initial informal review under the former zoning ordinance, which allowed these land uses in both zoning districts. Number six, based on trends in the area, availability of public infrastructure, the timing of this rezoning proposal is appropriate for consideration. Number seven, this amendment will not create any special privilege, result in unlawful exclusionary zoning, or set an inappropriate precedent. No adverse impacts are anticipated by the proposed rezoning or development of the lot consistent with zoning ordinance requirements.
So you heard the motion from LaBelle. Is there a second?
Support.
Second by Fuller. All right, so the motion was by LaBelle as stated, and support or second was by Fuller. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion? If not, then I will ask, I'll ask Jennifer to call the roll.
Waring,
He was muted, but
and Fuller,
Yes.
Darren,
Yes.
Shingles,
Yes.
Squittrito,
yes.
and LaBelle.
Yes.
That motion carries 6-0.
Okay. All right, thank you. So that'll go, that's a recommendation, that'll go to the township board.
Yeah, so the next step will be actually to go to the County Planning Commission. We are expecting, I spoke with the county today, and this should be on their agenda for their meeting that's in early December, which would put this potentially before our Board of Trustees at their December 16th meeting, just to give kind of a heads up to the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
Phil, the applicant does have his hand raised, Rich and Sarah, actually, both have applicants do.
Okay, well, I'll recognize Rich and or Sarah if they'd like to comment.
I would, thank you. We had one request, and as I understand the process, we go before the township board, and then we would come back to you. And what we wondered is if that second meeting, when we come back to you, is it possible to get final approval on the rezoning, but also final approval on the site plan? If that was possible, we'd like to accomplish both at that next meeting.
Actually, the process, the rezoning process will go to the Board of Trustees, potentially at their December 16th meeting. If they agree with the Planning Commission and take action, they have to hold two readings. They essentially have to act twice. So the first reading would be on December 16th. The second, they would hold a second reading at a future meeting. Potentially they're meeting in early January. I think it's the 13th, if I recall. It's the second Wednesday in January. If they James is you know what's coming, so yep. Anyway, so if they adopt the amendment at their second reading, the notice would then be published in the newspaper after that meeting, and under the State Zoning Act, the rezoning would go into effect on the 8th day after that notice is published in the newspaper. So at this point, we're probably well into January. The timing will be interesting. I will say this, that if the board has their second reading at their meeting in early January, that will be before our planning commission meeting. If they take action to adopt it, I can see putting this on the January planning commission agenda for site plan review, because essentially the board will have acted, and we can probably move forward with the site plan sort of contingent on the final details of adoption taking place. But until the adoption is actually effective, there is always the possibility of something changing. Because, for example, the reason why we wait 8 days after the notice is published in the newspaper is because the State Zoning Act has a referendum option that allows anybody who doesn't like the action to submit essentially submit a notice that they are going to gather petition signatures for a referendum vote of the people related to that action. It's very rare. And considering that we have no comments related to this request, I wouldn't expect it here, but we still do have to wait out that process formally for any rezoning to actually become effective. So, Rich, what my thought would be is that you and I should probably have a conversation after the board has their first reading of this.
Okay.
We'll look at the details of scheduling then.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if there aren't any other comments on that, we're ready to move on to our next agenda item, and which is approval of the 2021 meeting schedule. So you have in your packet, so the proposal is to continue to meet on the third Tuesday of the month. And so they list the, where is that? And then I guess there was a suggestion as to whether we want to consider a joint meeting with the Sidewalks and Pathways Committee in January. Is that right?
That is correct. The committee, and I apologize, I'm jumping on Mike's item here, but yes, the committee asked for a joint meeting in January potentially.
Oh, okay. All right. So that was their idea. Can Mike comment on that? I mean, what's the scoop on?
Yeah, I think it was to verify goals for the year, just to make sure we were going in the right direction, if I remember right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So what the heck I did with that? Was there actually a separate piece of paper with that list of dates on it? I thought there was.
There is. I can share the screen on that so you can see it that way.
I guess we'll have to. I don't know what the heck I did with it.
So you should be able to see it now.
Yeah, that's the one I'm looking for. So, so I guess I would entertain a motion to approve our meeting schedule and endorse, there it is. Endorse the idea of a joint meeting with the Sidewalks and Pathways Committee on the 19th.
So moved.
Okay, a motion by Shingles or a second?
Support, LaBelle.
Second by LaBelle. For this, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, further discussion? All in favor of setting our meeting schedule as put forth in this document and inviting the Sidewalks and Pathways Committee to conduct the joint meeting on the 19th, please say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, so that's approved. As you just pointed out though, Rodney, we could have agenda items of our own. So I'm assuming there'll be some portion of our meeting that will be allocated to that. And then if we have other agenda items, we'll have that as just us, I guess, and they can watch and enjoy if they want.
That would be my thought, is maybe I'd have up at the beginning of the meeting where we normally have presentations or something, have that joint event.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we did that. And so then the last of the new business items is approval of our annual report. So I always make a little joke every year that something along the lines of I couldn't have written a better report myself because I never actually write them. The staff graciously writes our report for us and we approve it. I do, though, have one on page 2 under other activity in that first paragraph. The second sentence, it repeats, or it says training sessions, training opportunities. So I'm assuming it needs to be either one or the other or and. But otherwise, I liked it. I thought it was a good summary of what we did. You know, had both statistics as well as a nice description of what we did across the year. But it's open for any other comments that commissioners might have. Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve our annual report for submission to the Board of Trustees.
Move to approve the report, the annual report.
Okay, motion is by Shingles. Is there a second? Second by Thering. Further discussion? Again, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so we'll consider that approved. And again, thanks to Township staff for preparing that report. So we'll move on. The next item is under other business is a return to the discussion of the implementation of the master plan and any continuing discussion that we want to have tonight regarding a number of action items that we'd identified, including water quality, industrial districts, code enforcement, and capital improvements. We'd also talked about housing, and Rodney had indicated that I guess you'd been to a conference or something, and there had been some materials, and those were included in your packet. Actually, not just on housing, but it looked like on some other stuff as well. Do you want to briefly just tell us what you've given us?
What you have here is a packet of information that was put together by a group called Housing North, which is a private nonprofit entity up in the Traverse City area. Traverse City, of course, has seen explosive growth. They've seen explosive growth in short-term rentals and conversion of single-family homes into rentals. They've also have the challenges that they don't have a lot of land available for new residential development that without infringing on some very pristine and important natural resources up there. So they have housing challenges, and they have done a great job, I think, of looking at the issues associated with housing and inequities that exist, especially related to lower income and workforce type housing. One of the challenges they have in that area is being able to provide housing opportunities for the folks that are in the service industries up there, which of course are a huge part of that community, just as the service industries are a huge part of this community. And it's hard for folks in those lower income groups that provide very important service to find housing that is adequate, reasonable in cost, and in good condition. So what they've done is essentially what you have before you here is kind of excerpts from their larger study of housing issues, and they focus first on understanding the problem, and so that's where the packet starts, looking at some of the issues involved with housing, that many of which I think apply equally well here in our community. They also provided the list of terminology that they use. We have terms like affordable housing, low-income housing, market rate housing, but also they have a term attainable housing, which is an interesting term. I mentioned workforce housing. They define that term, and then they get into in the packet looking at needs, looking at demand, looking at for their, now in this case for their community, looking at what are the issues that people are finding as they want to move into this community. Some of the issues with shortages. One of the challenges we have, as Peter and I've talked about with others as well, Union Township has not seen a new housing development recently. We're not seeing subdivisions like we once saw, or a site condominium as we once saw. We've had one housing development that was a duplex condominium, small project that had been in the works for quite a long time up on River Road that finally came to fruition. But one of the problems with the development community is that a single family neighborhood, a subdivision, is really one of the most risky developments to make today. Although there is a demand for housing, the developers have to put a great deal of risk into this to try to develop that kind of housing, because they really don't know where the market will be 2 years from now when they finally can bring to market that type of housing. From the starting point of presenting something to you to putting a shovel in the ground simply takes a lot of time, and in our very volatile world, economic world we're in, a good circumstance right now may be completely different 2 years from now. And so developers are reticent to even pursue projects like that. So it ultimately affects the availability of housing, which then drives the cost up. So this packet just offers some basic background, talks about what is affordable, what does it mean to be affordable housing. It talks about some of the elements like wages for various lower income service oriented individuals and what they can afford rent wise. Just trying to get at giving a little bit of a picture of what some of the potential housing issues that we may have here in our community as well.
Okay, very good. So really, as we've talked about before, this is really an ongoing discussion item for us. There's no fixed deadline that we're operating under, but we've had a reasonably short meeting tonight. So if there's, and I don't know the extent to which folks have had time to think about this, I will because I believe in honesty, I will be honest with you all, which is that I've had very little time to think about this in the last month or so, just based on other things going on in my life. But I'm happy to have the discussion if folks have or have thoughts to offer at this time.
Doug has raised his hand.
Okay, Doug?
Yeah, Rodney, I just, do we, I guess the pamphlets or materials that you handed out to us or sent to us, would you say that a lot of these similarities are I mean, this is a Traverse City based firm, but is this strictly for our community, or is it strictly for Traverse City, or is it kind of both?
Well, what I gave you, the other handout that you have is actually right out of our own master plan. So that one, you see, it's just entitled Housing at the beginning, and these are actually excerpts from our master plan. So that's the second handout, and it's certainly good information to take a look at and consider. I think there's some very valid points made in the master plan, and some policy direction given there that's important. The Housing North item, as I said, what I gave you is not the whole packet that the whole analysis they put together. What I gave you was kind of the elements that I thought had relevance to us here in Isabella County and Union Township. Certainly, Traverse City is its own unique place, and they had detailed analysis of some of the specific issues that come from being a tourist town and a summer resort community. That's not where these pieces of the puzzle went, and so these are the pieces that I felt had good resonance to what we're potentially looking at here in our community as well, because we do have issues with housing. We certainly have issues with affordability and with availability potentially, and frankly, we also have an issue with having housing in the right place. For folks with lower incomes that may not have access to transportation, reliable transportation, they need to have housing that's in the right location. So it's close to jobs, close to shopping, close to walk or bike to things. So all those pieces of the puzzle are planning issues that come into play and are discussed to some extent in the Housing North handout and also in our master plan.
I appreciate that description, and I apologize for not being more clear. I was more referring to the Housing North materials. So like on page 33, where it says understanding the province got high cost development and local policies and public opposition. This is kind of something that's, certainly been at the forefront for, most of the folks that we deal with project development. A lot of people aren't doing developments, whether it's housing, whether it's duplexes, whether it's apartments, because of zoning ordinances in certain areas. We've got a lot of experience in the city of Mount Pleasant. There's a lot of zoning restrictions or requirements that are not desirable. Sewer, water, and all these fees to hook up are becoming increased, the cost of these expenses. So I'm just thinking, my question to you is, what are we going to do as a township to try to accommodate some of these needs? I mean, what can we do to help reduce the costs to the developer or somebody, whoever's going to put it in, could be a homeowner, to be able to get some more, to create some more tax base?
Well, I think that's largely one of the purposes of the conversation we're having. I certainly don't have all the answers to this, and some are big challenges. You mentioned water and sewer. The township is in the process right now of looking at adjusting the water and sewer rate schedule. It's part of the proposed budget package for 2021, and it would include a fee increase because an analysis was done of the current rates, and there was a recognition that the rates are not paying for the service that's provided. That we're, in fact, if we don't make an adjustment, that we could be in a position where we're operating at a substantial loss. So that's based on the needs of our infrastructure. That's based on the anticipated maintenance and upgrades that will be coming. And so there are pieces of the puzzle that we somewhat to some extent have no control over, and and cost of utility access is one of those, because it truly is based on a fee for service. There's not a profit motive to it. It's simply making sure that the township, that water and sewer fund has the resources to maintain the system in a safe manner. But there are other possibilities. Certainly, things that can be done. Look at density that's allowed. You increase density. If you allow more units, obviously you can increase potential for affordability. Some communities have gone down the road of requiring, as part of increasing density, requiring a certain percentage of a project to be affordable housing in one form or another. Not every community does, but certainly Ann Arbor is one that I'm familiar with directly that has been doing that successfully for many years. Beyond that, the projects like what we have in our zoning ordinance for mixed use development, where we have commercial and residential together, where you're mixing income sources for the property owner, and again, potentially increasing the density of activity on the site. Those are all possible ways to improve improve affordability and improve the ability to develop property where it's desirable to do that. But beyond that, as I said, that's really, Doug, your question is one for this body, to kind of look at long term. What do we want to emphasize? What do we want as our policy priorities?
Yeah, and all that's good information. I firmly believe that we as a township, we have to come up with something that is more desirable for, if we want to create tax base and do these things that we talk about, we have to come up with some creative ways to do that, whether it's lower permit fees, maybe no permit fees. I don't know what's allowable, what's not allowable. How do you cut costs? Because if costs are continuing to go up and nobody can build affordable housing, as it states right in these pamphlets from Housing North. I mean, it's clear as day. Is what, my brother and I and other developers, probably at least 20 other developers in town, have been saying the same thing for, at least 5 years since I've been here, and they've been saying it long before that. So how do we come up with something where the township can cut the cost for the people that are going to be doing these things to create what we want them to create? And if we're only going to be raising things such as sewer fees, utilities, and all this stuff, we're only going to be raising it, that's going the wrong direction. So to me, I think we're kind of talking out of both sides of our mouth. We want this, but we want that, and they're two polar opposites. So I'm not sure how we're going to accomplish that when we continue to increase fees and make it more difficult for people to develop. To me, it's not going to work, which I'm sure you're well aware of. So I'd be open for Mark and the staff, and obviously anybody on this commission, to come up with some ideas on how we can reduce the cost of these folks if we truly, legitimately, and honestly, genuinely want these things in our community.
If I may, Phil, if I may share one more thought on that topic.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, Mike Darren has his hand up, but just one thought on this fee schedule. I do recognize and understand the challenge and the difficulty anytime fees have to go up. We all experience it. Certainly our electricity rates have not decreased in most cases. Our cost of living, food, and other things rise over time. I had experience. I have a car. It's a Hyundai Sonata. It's a lovely car. 2007. It's been around a long time. Been wonderful. At one point, I failed to take action promptly to replace tires that were getting worn. They really were. I really had not paid attention to them. And what happened was I had a front tire that wore unevenly. When I noticed it, I was 150 miles from home, and I could see bits of steel belt coming through the rubber. And I was not, I think it was a Sunday, nobody was open. I couldn't go to the tire store. And so I tried to make it home on this tire, and I got almost all the way home. Got near the Zilwaukee Bridge, coming up 75 from downstate where I had been, and it blew out. The tire just failed. It wore out. That was it. And side of the road had to change the tire on the side of the road. That's the real problem we have here. That I didn't invest in that set of wheels when I should have. And eventually they failed, and it became a whole lot bigger deal because it was 20 degrees and snowing and the whole thing when I had to change that tire. It's really the same thing here with the water and sewer. We have to fund the system, and in this case, it is a necessary step. We've been looking at, and this has been public. There have been public meetings. I think on our township YouTube channel, you can go and watch the meetings where these topics were discussed and where the analysis was reviewed and related to water and sewer fees. It is absolutely necessary to make an adjustment in the fees in order to be able to properly fund our system, to make sure we have safe water and that our sewer system will function properly, and have the resiliency and the capacity to do the job that needs to be done. So there's not a case where we can lower those rates. They are not, as I said, it's not a profit margin issue. It's all about funding the system. There may be other things that can be done, whether that be through grants or other incentives that may be available or could be made available somehow. But unfortunately, fees are township fee structure is really a fee for service. It's not a profit-making item at all. We're in fact compelled that we cannot do anything more than cover our costs with regards to fees. And so that's what we endeavor to do with things like the water sewer structure. Mike had a comment.
Mike?
Thank you, Phil. So, again, to Doug's point, it's getting more people using those utilities to help pay for it. But have we done, we've exhausted a lot of property in Union Township putting up rentals. And in order to, whatever, the developers see a money-making opportunity there. But have we provided property with the proper density to put in single-family homes that would be affordable for a developer to take on, make some money, but also that our service industry or our skilled trade industry can afford to buy these houses, and maybe not be in downtown city limits where it's a very old house that takes a lot of maintenance. And the one place I was down, my daughter used to live in Columbus, Georgia. Of course, Fort Benning is down there. And so, again, similar incomes when you're in that, in the forces. And so the density of the house, you could get a house on a slab, but a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house, kitchen, dinette, small fenced in backyard. But what my point is, people would be able to buy the house, not rent it, but buy it if we can build it affordable. So what I think our job is to look at what we have, property we have left that potentially we could put or make attractive to a developer, that we could put in single family houses. Maybe they're right next to each other, which some people might shake a stick at with condo developments and all that. Nobody wants to be right next to it. But some people would be attracted to that because they'd be purchasing the house, not just renting it as a duplex or an apartment or what have you. So I don't know if that would be worthy of us looking for that I'm sure the LaBelles and the other housing developers have probably looked at what Union Township offers, and maybe they say our density for single family homes just doesn't lend to making money. But that also tells us that once they develop it, the people we're targeting, the service industry and the skilled trade industry, probably couldn't afford it then. So we didn't really catch the niche that we were going for. Yeah, nothing's getting cheaper, but I would think that with what we have to offer in this town, we're not attracting the single families to the township. They're going to the older neighborhoods in the city, most likely, because that's the old town, or out to the farmhouses and trying to pick those up. But there you're paying for property and you've got higher taxes. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I had a question. One of the things that's been going on this year, amongst all the things that has been going on this year, is the census. How much data does the township get from that? I mean, I would think, do you just get the number of bodies in the township, or do you get? I would think that it would, people would want like demographic information. How many people of different ages live? Because my impression is that a lot of the population growth in the township has been driven by students, and we know that enrollments are way down at CMU. I'm hard pressed to believe that they're going to be rebounding dramatically anytime soon. Our hope, of course, is that they start to climb again, but who really knows what's going to happen there? I agree that there's been, and the big projects that have gone up in the township in the last 10 years have been apartment complexes for students, and whether there's a demand for other sorts of housing would in part be driven by what's happening to population and demographics, I would think. So does that data exist? Do we get good data from the census, or is it available elsewhere, or what?
Well, we certainly have, we will have access to the 2020 census data as it becomes available. Right now, of course, the detailed data that's available is for the 2010 census, and then there's 2 census products. Every 10 years, the Census Bureau, of course, does the full census of the entire country. In between, on the 5-year point in between the 10-year census record, they have an American Community Survey that they do, where they attempt to update the information through a survey of only selected individuals, kind of random sample, but a very, very large random sample. And that data is also available for 2015. The 2020 census data, we will get basic numbers by April of next year. The Census Bureau is required to provide to the states and local units that need it the basic population counts, so that they can take care of any redistricting. For example, of course, every 10 years we do redistricting of the congressional districts and also the state house and state senate districts based on population. And so that data, that basic population data, will become available by April of next year. The detailed data, the drilling down into the demographics, population, housing, income, all that stuff, ethnicity, all those things, that will come later, most likely some point in the summertime of 2021. So as it becomes available, it certainly will be posted. The Census Bureau wants it to be used. And so they often have a very some very nice systems for being able to access the data, pull down what you need, and even analyze it. We'll have it eventually.
Well, I would, if anyone in the township office is looking at that stuff, I would encourage you to share it with us. I think it would be interesting for us to see it, and I think it might be helpful to to some of this discussion.
Yeah, as it becomes available, we'll certainly share it. Doug has his hand up again.
Okay, Doug?
I just wanted to comment on Commissioner Darren, just some information that, we have is that there is a builder in town that, was typically building homes for around $140 a square foot, but that was a year or two ago. I would say, I haven't talked to him about it. My guess is it's probably closer to 150 now. So if that's the case, I mean, just a 1,500 square foot home, you can get kind of compact, 3-bedroom, 2 baths, just kind of what you talked about, dining room, kitchen, small living room. And these are usually, 2 levels. That's 225,000. Now, I don't know what everybody with the state or what all their thresholds are of what's considered an affordable house, but I mean, even at 1,000 square feet, that's 150,000. I don't know if that's considered affordable. So, I mean, I just don't think the numbers really work unless someone's building it, really, really cheap. Again, I'm not a builder. I'm just speculating. So I don't know what that threshold is to be considered affordable on what somebody could afford. So, maybe Rodney can comment on that what's affordable sheet, the 0 to 30% AMI, 30 to 50, 50 to 80, 80 to 100. My guess is for a two income household, they're going to be in the 50 to 80 to 80 to 100 to be able to afford a house like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is low income to moderate income.
But I guess, and then the other question I was going to have, which relates to what Doug was talking about, what the discussion has been. I mean, we obviously don't exist in a vacuum, and so there must be other townships in Michigan that are similar to us, demographically, population-wise, other sorts of things. Do municipalities kind of look at each other and make comparisons and kind of look at what goes on, what works elsewhere, all this sort of thing? In other words, I'm assuming we're not the only place with those issues. And so, how do other places deal with those issues?
Well, I mean, the Housing North, I think, is one example of a very proactive effort. Now, this is the Housing North group, as I said, it's a private nonprofit. It's not a government agency. And often in the world of housing, that's what you see. You see nonprofit agencies being involved in the affordability area, in this exact area that we're talking about. And they are sort of taking the forefront. Certainly in my experience as a consultant working with local governments, more local governments, especially townships, tend to be on the side of opposing new housing rather than trying to encourage it. Because often in the past, new housing was equated with sprawl. It was equated with loss of rural character. It was equated with loss of the unique elements of the community. And I think as Doug pointed out earlier in this little packet from Housing North, one of them was often there's public opposition to new housing developments. Not in my backyard kind of opposition to developing the field that they've been enjoying for the last 10 years out their back window. So it's more often than not, especially in townships, that you see that kind of gut level, no, we don't want any more unless we absolutely are forced to. We don't want to look at new housing. Union Township is somewhat unique. We are part of, I guess, the metro Mount Pleasant area. Together, Union Township and the city of Mount Pleasant are an urban environment. Obviously, Union Township is trending, from urban to rural, but we are part of this greater community of Mount Pleasant, and so we do experience some of the more urban challenges that larger cities. They're more common to larger cities than to a suburban rural township. So to some extent, we're a bit unique in that regard. there are some communities around Lansing that might be similar. Delhi Township or a place like that. Metro Detroit probably are as well, and especially in Oakland County, Farmington, what now is Farmington Hills. That was once a township. Some other places like that have rural and urban spaces, but we do have some unique challenges. The student housing, as was mentioned, is one of them because of that need and that pressure for student housing. It does distort the market somewhat.
Yeah. Well, one of the visions I remember when we were discussing the master plan, whether it was the most recent one or might have even been the one before that, but was this idea of infill and trying to build from within and have more population density closer into the city, and creating, whether it's on the west side or the east side or wherever, creating more walkable kind of places where you could actually have people living and also have services. Part of the problem we have is that we don't have the services everywhere. So I mean, if you live on the west side, you have to drive across town to get to the supermarket. And if when I think about building subdivisions, well, where are the subdivisions going to be? They're going to be out where there's land, but condos and duplexes and even row houses would be something that you could build, in between stuff in, closer to town, and where if there was a store nearby, that, it might be an attractive place for people to live, and might reduce the even minimally the amount of time someone gets in their car and drives somewhere. I struggle with this because I feel like, as a person that does live in one of those subdivisions and has to drive to the supermarket, I get frustrated when I hear about people wanting to make it more difficult to drive across town because it's already getting challenging. So there's balances that are going to have to be struck all the way around. But I don't think building more subdivisions in the outlying areas is going to help that. It's just going to make it more difficult.
One of the things that we deal with is the rigidity of zoning. We have a zoning district. It is R2A, it's R2B, it's B4, B5. Just as we saw tonight, zoning is by nature a fairly rigid system, and it's not subtle. We often have we zone broad areas for business, we zone broad areas for residential, when in reality, the human beings don't live in these broad single-use categories. We were talking about Traverse City. What makes Traverse City so attractive as a place to go and visit? Well, it's walkable. You have the downtown area that has all the shops, and it once had a lot of the grocery stores and hardware stores and all that. A lot of that's gone tourist now, but there's still some of that there. But you can walk. You can live there and walk to the downtown. You can rent a Airbnb and walk downtown. You can walk down to the bay. You can bike ride comfortably around that community. It is an environment where things are at a very fine grain, smaller sizes. Retail is smaller in the traditional part of Traverse City. It's all smaller scale. Zoning, one of the side effects of it is it tends to create a larger, more coarse-grained development pattern. Walmart, instead of the neighborhood grocery store, it's Walmart. Instead of the corner drugstore, it's the 15,000 square foot CVS pharmacy, at the back of a big parking lot. So that is a challenge with zoning. The PUD process is one of the tools that was developed to try to counteract that, and it is a way we can try to get back to this idea of creating real neighborhoods that have the services as well as the residences. But we also have to have developers willing to try it. There are ways we can make our zoning more fine-grained. We can allow a broader mix of uses in various zoning districts. We can allow more residential in the business district, more business-oriented activities in the residential district. You know, we can mix things up more, but it is something that we do have to look at very carefully because all of that can have potential unintended consequences, you know, as we move forward. So even, for example, you know, we've had conversations about housing and the importance of it and the importance of providing for areas that, you know, that a developer can develop new housing in this community. One of the other things we need is we need employment center. We have a lot of commercial. We have probably more commercial than we really have need of at this particular point. More bricks and mortar commercial between the city and the township than there really is a market for. But we don't have enough land for employment center, the you know, warehouse, distribution center, research office, industrial type operations. We just don't have the land for it, and we're missing out on opportunities for those types of businesses because we do not have ready land available for development. So that same land that we might use for that employment center activity is also the same land we probably would use for housing. So we often will have these competing goals. And part of our job as planners, both as planning commission, as professional staff, is we always are trying to balance competing interests and decide, and looking at what is the best approach. I think it's completely appropriate to look at housing in detail, but as we do, and as we're looking at policies we might develop for that, we also have to kind of keep in mind the other elements of the public interest that come into play that might compete with that.
Definitely. Other comments from commissioners?
Yeah, I just had one other comment is, you know, Rodney was talking about Traverse City. You know, Traverse City is a wonderful community, but it's hardly affordable. I mean, the cost to buy a house there is, their real estate market's probably double what it is here.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm estimating, but I have spent a lot of time up there. We do have business in Traverse City, multiple businesses. And you know, that real estate market has just gone through the roof. And you know, to buy something equivalent to something here in Mount Pleasant, it's going to cost you at least double, depending on exactly where that location is.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to mention is, I know you mentioned about, you know, here's what we want to be able to ease all these, you know, allow more options for developers to put housing. But again, it really, when it comes down to a developer, it comes down to numbers. It comes down to numbers and is there a need? And you can create the opportunities, but if they don't see the need, it's not going to come to fruition. So I appreciate that we're all coming up with these, you know, in urban, you can do residential above retail. You could do this, you could do that, but a developer is not going to do it if one, they don't see the need, and two, the numbers don't make sense.
Right.
And unfortunately, we're in a community where there's just not a, you know, the wage here is just not real high. So they can't really afford what it is to live here, or they don't want to live in something that they can't afford. They want something a little bit nicer, but yet they can't afford it. So therein lies the struggle. So I think it's a never-ending battle. We can certainly continue to revisit these. It's just, you know, until there's some reduction in costs of some sort for people to build stuff in any way that we can, it just makes it more difficult for somebody to build something affordable. I mean, just kind of coming full circle. So I don't want to beat a dead horse. I know we've got multiple other topics to talk about, but housing it was great information and kind of what our family's been saying in this town in general for the last 5 years. So we've still got an uphill battle.
Okay, thank you. So we've been talking about a half hour here. I do want to remind you that in your packet is the memo from September 8th, which is the checklist that Rodney put together. So one thing you might do and I will do when I have a chance, is sit down with this and maybe just go down it, and for each individual, kind of have a look at that, and maybe you know, rank some of those items in terms of things you think come to the top of the list. Does anyone have any other specific items that they want to discuss tonight?
James Theron has his hand up at the moment.
Jane, did you have your hand
You
up?
know what? That was, I think, related to the previous discussion. And what I was gonna say about the housing was maybe, to Doug's point of cost and need, it's more just preparing for, because maybe we're a little too small to have everything perfect. But the goal, we can see it, we're not quite big enough to have the grocery stores and the gas stations and everything perfect for everybody to bike and walk. But eventually that's gonna come, and continuing this conversation will hopefully prepare us for that in respect of cost effective and location. That was it.
Okay. And of course, the board of trustees will solve all our problems because they're the acting body. So we'll wait for you to do that. All right. Other comments? Okay. I guess I'd suggest keep this on the agenda. We'll continue to kind of work our way through it as we have time, and eventually we'll hit on some action items.
That's right. Eventually will. This is the discussion. It can sometimes feel like it's not going anywhere. And first of all, it's always good to simply learn more and have more information available to you when you do have things, projects or whatever coming in. You have sort of armed with more information. But ultimately, as you said, this can lead to positive change. What that is will be decided down the road, I guess. But it's certainly a good conversation to have.
I agree with that. So I think it's worthwhile. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap that up for tonight. The last two items, we've got extended public comment. So if there's anyone who would like to address the Planning Commission on any item, whether it was on tonight's agenda or not, they're invited to do so at this time. Again, we ask you to give us your name and address for the minutes and limit your comments to 5 minutes on any issue under the sun. So extended public comments open at 8:36. And hearing none, we'll go ahead and close that back up. While still at 8:36. Final board comment. Any comments from commissioners? I guess I do want to take the opportunity to thank James Thering for his service on the board of or on the Planning Commission, because he managed to get himself elected to the Board of Trustees. In fact, I think were you the highest vote getter? I think you were way up there. In any case, congratulations to you on that, and best of luck on your service on the board. And so this is your last meeting on the Planning Commission. So again, thanks for your service, and it's been a pleasure working with you. Any other comments from commissioners?
Actually,
I can barely hear you, by the way. I don't know if you can turn your sound up at all.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. It's low, but we can hear you, I think, if you speak up a little bit.
Okay. Just being on the Planning Commission has been a very positive and eye-opening opportunity. And, just working with all of you, the knowledge that you guys have is extremely impressive, along with all the discussion that, wow, all I can say is wow. So, thank you for allowing me to be part of it. And if there's anything I could be of service of, please let me know, and good luck to you all.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay, then I'm going to declare that we've completed our agenda for tonight, and we'll stand adjourned until our December meeting. We have a December meeting, right?
You do, yes.
Okay.
Actually, it's early December. It's the 15th.
Okay, so it's the earliest possible third Tuesday, right?
That's
'Cause
correct.
December 1st must be a Monday or a Tuesday itself then. Right?
It is, yes. It is the
Right.
earliest possible it can be. So if it's far away from Christmas as it can be.
Okay, well, that's not a bad thing. All right, so we'll look forward to seeing folks at that time, and otherwise have a great evening.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks.
good night.
Thanks.